Welcome to this Gluware tutorial on the topic of using the config modeling app to automate global parameters and also adding QoS or quality of service. So you'll be able to follow along with this using your Gluware test drive environment. For more information about the test drive, please visit gluware.com/test-drive. Thank you. So once again, we're going to start this Gluware tutorial by logging into our system. The Gluware system I'm logging into is demo.gluware.com with my credentials. And as a reminder, if you're doing the Gluware test drive, your credentials are operational, so you will not have ability to do certain administrative or editing tasks. It will result in an error if you try that with your current permission level. So follow along, and I'll let you know the steps that you're able to complete. So I go ahead and sign in, and we're going to go back into config modeling because it's really an extension of the last use case. If I navigate back to the node view and I'm looking at the filter for iOS routers, I see my spoke routers 1, 2, 3, and 4 and my hub 1 and 2. So let's take the use case where you have a set of globals and now you have a use case where you need to deploy QoS. And so the use case we're going to look at is deploying QoS in addition to the globals on Hub 1 and Hub 2. First, let's start by implementing, kind of a best practice in Gluware, which is when I'm going to be starting from an assembly that already exists, but I want to modify it, I can navigate to the D for domains, which are things that are kind of domain wide. And I'm going to highlight this assembly for standard features, and I'm going to use this clone button. So this particular set of steps you more than likely will not be able to do as an operational user, but you're going to end up with a assembly already created for you to use for the provisioning step. So just follow along with me here. So we have cloned this particular assembly, and now when I look at it, I come over here and I edit it. And what I'm going to call it is standard global features with QoS. So I've named it. Now when I look at the features that exist in the assembly, I have banner and DNS and NTP and SNMP and syslog. Now I'm going to add a feature. And so you can add feature of any of the features that have been built that are usable in your environment when you have the right credentials. And so I'm going to choose the QoS feature, and for the policy, I'm going to choose QoS large site. So once I'm finished with that edit, I'm adding the management of QoS. The policy I have added is QoS large site for these two hub sites, and I hit save. So now back to my node view, when I click on hub 1, and down here this router represents hub 1. Now what I want to do on hub 1 is go to the associations and change the assembly. So now I'm going to click this drop down and choose standard globals with QoS and hit save. And I'll do the same for my hub 2 for consistency in this use case. There are kind of other mechanisms you can do when changing assemblies on a lot of devices, but we're not going to be showing that in this use case. I'm going to again select standard globals with QoS and hit save. So now what you see in your, and I'll navigate back to hub 1 just for kind of consistency here. Now you see all the features that existed, but in your, again, I like to navigate from the node instance map. There's a new feature that is listed here. And when I double click on this first item, you see that QoS is actually made up of 3 features to complete the overall QoS configuration. So when I look at that over here, it's QoS ACLs, it's class maps, and policy maps. So all 3 of these are required or feature components that make up the overall set. And so if I just kind of continue my navigation and look at my class maps are made up of CLI config, and here are my match statements and the various, this is again native vendor CLI, And in this case, I'm not incorporating the usage of variables within the CLI. The next construction item is how Gluware is reading the current class maps, because again, Gluware always reads before it writes in terms of knowing that it is configuring the right parameters. Similarly, for policy maps, I can see, I have my policy maps all defined, and again, it's straight vendor CLI, so we're not really breaking down that in here. In here, there is a kind of a hole punched, if you will. There's a bandwidth value that is for class default. You can poke variables in these QoS parameters, and then again, if I go back to my feature, if you remember from the previous use case and the configuration, any of the variables you add, you can expose here for abstracted configuration when you want users to not have to touch the CLI. And there's other ways you can abstract configurations with things like workflows. So the final construct here for the QoS feature are the ACLs, and I can see all my ACLs, which is doing the traffic mapping or matching, doing the port numbers and various ACLs required to match on those flows. So QoS is there and QoS is configured. And if I go back to my node view, so what I see is all my spokes have the standard globals, but on my hubs, I have my standard globals with QoS. And so the piece that you're definitely able to follow along on is you go ahead and select hub 1, choose the action. So we select that node that we want to take an action on, and we want to do a provisioning utility, and we want to preview the provisioning, and let's hit start. So just in good practice with using any automation, using Gluware especially, is you want to test it and verify that your actions are going to be used. Gluware has a special property in which the preview shows it's what it's going to do before it actually commits it or writes it down on the device. A connected preview enables Gluware to read the current state and show you what it needs to implement to ensure all features managed match the desired state. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed with that connected preview. Once you have kicked off that action, change your navigation to the provisioning logs. And I can see here, again, make sure you're navigated to the right router with hub 1. And I can double click on this line, and I see the very detailed log Gluware gives me of all the interaction. That logging level is customizable with this cog on the right-hand side with the various logging levels. Again, mentioned before, I like to click on the CLI view. Being a former network engineer, I really can look at this and understand exactly what it's doing. I can see it's running its pre-checks, it's capturing the configuration, it's examining each component of the features being managed, and then it's finished. And when I hit processed, I can see exactly what it needs to do. So for this particular guy, this preview, I'm doing nothing for banner. I'm implementing the change in DNS. I'm implementing the change in NTP. I'm implementing these features to make sure the QoS matches what's on the device. And this is, again, very powerful when you're automating complex configurations in the traditional manner or NCCMs. You're just pushing CLI, and it's difficult to end up in the true desired state. With Gluware ensures to remove what shouldn't be there, add what needs to be there in a declarative sense to ensure you're at that level. And I can see here everything, it looks good. So when I jump back out here to my logs, I actually now am going to select hub 1 and hub 2 from my node list over here. Now I can select both routers and execute a provision the feature, and I hit start action, and I go ahead and hit proceed. So again, I can look at the logs, or one thing I pointed out in the last use case, if you scroll to the right on this grid, you will see exactly what the Gluware engine is doing. As you get the summary, we're managing 7 features on these devices. And you can see here it's running through the features that it's managing, and I can see a state for each one as it proceeds here. And the desire is to ensure I complete the provisioning and get to this provisioned state. If there are any errors, Gluware will show you that there has been errors in the provisioning, and you can see exactly what errors have occurred. And if need be, you can take action to back out of that change. So it's on the NTP feature. And again, rolling through each one. And now it's automating the QoS configuration and SNMP. And as I mentioned before, we are working with really translate everything within Gluware is a piece of code. So this assembly has been modified, so now it's version 0.1.0. The QoS has been added into this assembly, so it's sitting at 1.0.0. If I were to increment any of these QoS configurations, I can see here at some point the QoS ACL had been modified, so I'm at version 1.0.2. But basically, we're really implementing a infrastructure as code, and those low-level features become, tracked and verified configurations. So now, just back to my node view in the grid, I can see here that the provisioning has been completed and has been successful. So this concludes this use case. So this concludes the use case, but also concludes the current use cases available in the test drive. We hope you enjoyed taking the test drive. As a reminder, please complete the feedback form available at the URL you see here. You'll also receive an email reminder. As a next step, please reach out to your Gluware contact or contact sales@gluware.com for further evaluation needs. As mentioned, we'd like to understand your use cases and see how the Gluware platform can help you solve your automation challenges. Also, check back often. We're going to be continuing to add vendors as well as additional use cases. And please follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and our YouTube channel. Thanks again.